Hi, I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing today, but wasn't really feeling in the mood for it, but I turned up and put some paper on my board and got my inks out, so I thought I'd have a play with the inks and not really have to think about anything. I started with putting some water, just clean water, on the board paper, just randomly, and I did start using Indian ink, but it really wasn't behaving the way I wanted it to, so I ended up using Sepia from my acrylic ink set, and it's got one of those little squeezy nozzle things, and you can let more ink out if you need to. So I started to use that and things started to improve a little bit. I was just making random marks and trying to aim for the areas that I knew I'd put some water down, but it was a bit hit and miss, as you can see. I then tilted the board, and you can get some nice effects with doing things like that. And as I said, I really wasn't feeling in the mood for some reason, but I progressed and carried on. Something might come of it. Half the battle is turning up, and having a go, which I certainly did on this day. Things didn't always turn out as I had expected. That little wire thing is actually a hair clip sort of thing, that you use for perhaps tying your hair up. It's sort of double-pronged thing, and it just about the right sort of size to make some very varied lines, which I quite liked. I was picking up the sort of pools of ink where it had settled in places, and I spread it around. I quite like making these sort of little shapes. It reminds me of dry stone walls that you get in the northern parts of England and Scotland. Just going around making random marks. I have speeded this up a little bit and cut scenes out where I was drying the paper, and I did make sure the previous layers were all dry before I progressed to the next part. The only problem I had was that some of the inks and the water ran underneath the masking tape, so it sort of messed things up a little bit for me, but it didn't really worry me, because I had another way of solving it, as you'll see later at the end. That's if you hang around that long, but I don't mind if you don't. I'm just re-wetting certain areas here, and with my inks I also mixed up, I used sepia and orange, I think it was, like a burnt orange colour, and I also used white acrylic paint, and then mixed the colours that I had in my inks, and I think I had a yellow and a green I used small amounts of, to create a paint later on where I could work further into this piece. Although it's divided into 6, I tried to treat it just as one painting and sort of work my way around the whole thing rather than concentrate just on one square at a time. The brush I'm using is something normally cheap. We have a store in the UK called The Works, and I got it from there, and I think I got a pack of, 4 or 5 for about £2, you know, just nothing really. Just as well, because they do get damaged. I'm not very clean with them. And letting the ink run again, and it's starting to create some really lovely effects. If you do this yourself and it's not running enough, you could spray it with a fine spray of water, or just add a drop of clean water to the area you want to run. And I flick it with water sometimes, tip it up and just bang it onto my work table, and then it starts to run, as you can see here now. Obviously can't decide which way up, I prefer it back to the original. Now this colour I'm putting down here, when I mixed it, I thought it was really nice. It was sort of like a muted sepia grey. It was really quite nice. But after a while, I realised it really wasn't doing much for me. And then I decided to change the colour later on. It's nice using a flat brush. You can get some nice straight edges and, you know, nice marks. The biggest problem I have is deciding where to put them. I think this took me about an hour and a half or so to do in total. But I have speeded it up for you, yet even so it still looks like I'm painting fairly slow. Here's the colour I made. I made it a little bit more green, which worked quite well with the orange I'd got laid down and the sepia. Still a nice soft colour, nice and creamy on the brush. I remember as I was starting to create the shapes and cover stuff up, parts up, and cut into certain marks I'd made, that I was starting to see things appearing in the individual squares that I had there. But it was only after towards the end, that I could do something about it, really. I do tend to find that if I make a mark like these little small ones that just with the brush mark, and I quite like doing that, I'll then go and find a space elsewhere that I can go and do the same sort of thing. So it's sort of like repeating the process around the larger piece of paper, although when they're separated, they're all individual. So it's palette knife comes in handy. It makes some great marks. You can sort of dig into the paper and scratch out, if you like, at the marks that go over paint that's already laid down, particularly if it's acrylic paint or oil. you can get some quite nice shapes with them. The pointed end, you make some nice shapes, so you can scrape it down and smudge stuff. The edge will give you a sharp edge. Some people use credit cards, an old credit card, that can have the same effect. I've used them from time to time, but I do quite like a palette knife. I had a bit of trouble with this little part up here. It started to go from bad to worse. And I got completely fed up with it and wiped it out. You can see now. There we go. Fed up. Didn't go how I wanted it. So if things like that happen, it's best to let the paper dry completely. Use a hairdryer or just let it dry naturally. And then once it's dry, you can then go back into it and correct it or paint over it, whatever you wanted to do, really. Now I'm just painting over it here with that greeny grey colour and adding some orange to recreate the area. Right, just drying everything up. The masking tape wasn't really stuck that very well, but if you use your hairdryer, it helps soften the glue on the masking tape, and they do lift off a lot easier without tearing the paper at all. But unfortunately, on this occasion, it didn't stick very well at all, so there's really no need for me to use the hairdryer. Right, so let's see what we've got. I decided to cut these into individual pictures. I'd marked it already on the original paper before I started painting, so I had a guideline, so I cut them into the 6 individual pictures so I could actually see them separately. Makes it much clearer. And once I started to look at them, deciding the right way up to start with, or the way I preferred, I could see shapes and things in there that I could probably go in with and do something with using a pen, which is exactly what I did later off camera. I wish I'd filmed it for you. Perhaps next time I'll get some and do it for you. But these are the end results. And what I did in the end was I actually tore the edge, so I took the border off because it wasn't very nice, and I just ripped it along the edge of a steel ruler that I had, and that created that uneven edge. And against the white paper, I really quite like it. So what turned out to be a bit of a ho-hum start, I was really, really pleased with the end result. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching, folks, and see you again. Bye.